Okay, so where are we? We're looking at Scrapy documentation for using JSONRequest. Now, I happen to know from doing a bit of earlier research that JSONRequest is a relatively new method which allows you to send JSON objects with your request. So this notepad here is actually taken from the official Scrapy documentation, and keys and values within your dictionary can be sent as JSON request when you yield within Scrapy. So yeah, that's good. I think there's very few bits of documentation other than that on the internet. So what I did was I actually wrote a test script in requests, and I found that by writing something in requests to begin with is actually quite a good way of testing something that you may later go on and run with Scrapy. So I tried testing with GitHub, and yeah, with GitHub you need authentication, and I just didn't want to get sidetracked by messing around with all of that. So I found this fakerapi.it/en, and what it allows you to do is send sort of test API requests, which is pretty good. So if you're not familiar with that, what you can do is choose a resource. So basically a resource is it's something that you want to get from the remote end, from the target, from the destination. So I chose to get some users. So by changing this drop down, it affects what appears in your URL, your request URL. So then if you do send test request, and then you get your response, 200 response, and then you get some data back. So if you change the quantity from 1 to 2, send again, and then you'll see you get 2 users back, and so on. So what else could you use? You could okay, so within this test you can only choose quantity. What we'll look at next is how to send more than just one key value pair. So quantity you've just seen, but by looking at the well, you can see it here. With my first request, I could see that there were other keys, and I just decided to get gender as well. So you can put quantity, gender. So by creating this dictionary for your payload, you can then request that, and what you see here will return the same. So female, there's one, and female second one there. So that's basically a quick test just to check your syntax. So that's your base URL, which then obviously goes into your GET request, and then JSON equals, because the JSON object is not, this is a Python dictionary, so you need to tell it that this is actually JSON, and then once it knows it's JSON, it can treat it as such. So that's part 1. Part 2 is actually using the syntax that I've just checked in requests, and then ignore that. So start requests, I just put in the fakerapi.it URL. So this is a good bit. Pass, self-response, then payload. So that's actually the same as what you just saw in my requests code. So this is the bit that we were looking at in Notepad, if you remember. So what I did was did yield, same there. JsonRequest, still the same. URL equals, so then I've put a new URL here, and that's the Faker API URL. The data equals the payload, so rather than that's meaningless and the API running on the server at fakerapi.it would not recognize any of those values because they are just dummy. So then data equals payload, which, as we've just discussed, quantity is 2. The key is quantity, the value is 2. The key is gender, the value is female. Then the default for JSON request is post. But with this API, we wanted to do a get. So you'll see this here, method equals get. So that is where we deviate from the official Scrapy example. But obviously the official Scrapy example was fine, but it was meaningless because it just had these dummy keys and values. So what I wanted to do was actually to put some real keys and values into it to actually test. So if you're ready, let's test this. So Python sc13.py, and off we go. And there you can see, let me just make that bigger, make the font bigger as well. We've got the same, we may not have the same names as we had with the requests example, and that'll purely be because these will be getting chosen in any old order. They're not sorted, so there we go. First name Adele, last name Hansen. So that's the first, and gender equals female, which is what we were expecting because we asked for gender equals female, and we wanted 2 users, which is what we've got there. If you look there, total equals 2. So the second result is, it's not the easiest to read, is it? Not like this, sorry about that. Yeah, there we go, gender equals female. So that's the second result out of all of that. And then what we could do is within that, we could then handle that as a response. And already you can see that there's website there, for instance. So what you could do is within your code then is you could then do a callback to pass underscore URL, which could then go through all of the, which could then go to the URL from each of the URLs returned within that response made to the API. So I hope that's, I don't know, I hope that's given you some food for thought at least, and I've put kind of some meat on the bones of Scrapy's JSON request. So all that's different is it's got JSON in front of the word request. And if you just bear with me, I'm just going to pause and I'm going to see if I can find the original post on GitHub where they were discussing creating this. Yeah, so I can't, sorry, just checking I'm still recording. I can't actually find that, but I can find here where it was being discussed with the naming convention and so on, and it was added in Scrapy version 1.7. It should be named JSON request, which it now is. And I've kind of assumed that you all know what an API is, and really you can post to an API or you can send a GET request. So here we've used GET, but you could equally have used post. And I don't know if I've still got it. Let me see if I can, if I put that URL into my browser and I'll just show you the There we go. So if we do an inspect on this, inspect element, and then if we look at network, and then if I do send test request, you can there see get fakeerapi.it addresses $_quantity equals 1. That's the default because I've opened it up again from scratch and it's just got the 1 in there. So if we change that to 2 and run it, no, I have to use the drop down, okay. And then if I do another send test request, you can see here quantity is now changed to 2. And so this is the request, and you can see the type is JSON. And if I click on it, that is actually, I think that's the that's the response. And there you can see scheme host file name quantity _1. Oh, that was the first one I did, and if I click on there, you can see there quantity equals quantity underscore quantity is 2. So I hope this has been interesting. I've kind of shown the Scrapy way to get data using a JSON payload. So the payload is essentially a dictionary of the keys and the values that you want to get from the API at the remote end. So that's the Scrapy version, and as you saw earlier, this was the basic Python version using just requests. And I'm not going to say any more. I think if you want to copy my code, I'll put a link to it on GitHub. I know this is kind of a bit theory, and if you never use JSON, then sorry, but I think often you'll see people trying to use Selenium and Splash and so on, when if you view the source, you'll see that much of even if the images are being loaded by JavaScript, the text is actually is being returned from an API request. And yeah, sometimes there's an overwhelming amount of text gets sent back, but once you start parsing it and filtering out the bits you don't want, that's much more reliable than having to iterate through parse details, parse 3, parse 4, and so on to get all of your bits and pieces that you actually need, and then passing down through each one using meta or CB_quarks. So, enough said, I think. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. Thumbs up because of the algos, yeah. Thumbs up. You got it. Bye.